Welcome to the Eye on the Reef training program. This module is an introduction to the Great Barrier Reef. In this module, we will take a regional tour of the Great Barrier Reef to see how it varies with latitude and environment. Along the way, we will be introduced to a simple scheme for the classification of reefs. This movie provides a basic overview of coral reef biology and geology, and the conditions that favour the formation of reefs. Reefs are found in tropical and subtropical seas between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. Sea temperature, water quality, and light are important to the hard corals and calcareous algae that build the reef's limestone structure. So reefs are typically best developed where water temperature is between 26 and 28 degrees and the depth is less than 50 metres. The Great Barrier Reef is one of the richest ecosystems on the planet. The reef contains more than 4,000 species of fish and over 400 species of hard coral. The keen observer can sight over 100 species of large animals, like whales, dolphins, turtles, and sharks. But there is more to the Great Barrier Reef than fish and coral. There are thousands of other species, little-known invertebrates and plants, that actually make up the bulk of life and provide the essential ecosystem services that keep the whole thing running. This living bounty is spread across thousands of square kilometres, ranging through reefs, submerged shoals and interreefal gardens, seagrass meadows, and mangroves. One of the reasons reefs have so many species is that they are very structurally complex. This habitat complexity provides a near-infinite variety of homes for a near-infinite variety of fish and invertebrate species. Seen from space, the Great Barrier Reef spans almost 15 degrees of latitude, and in places ranges between 30 and 300 kilometres off the coast. Let's go for a quick tour. In the north, the Great Barrier Reef is narrow, with the outer barrier reef forming deltaic reefs, distorted by the raging currents of the Torres Strait. These give way to the remote northern section of the marine park, home to many indigenous people and famous for its wilderness qualities and spectacular wildlife concentrations. Further south, high granite islands are flanked by the ribbon reefs and famous tourism dive sites. In the central section of the marine park, the reef maze begins to shift offshore. This is the region with the highest onshore human populations, with catchments dominated by grazing, agriculture, and mining activities. Southward again, and inshore, are the famous Whitsunday resort islands, while offshore lie the near-impenetrable Pompey and Swains reefs. Finally, at the southernmost part of the Great Barrier Reef are the vegetated cays, bird and turtle rookeries of the Capricorn Bunker Islands. The sheer size and physical diversity of the Great Barrier Reef spawns a parallel biological diversity that almost defies description. Ecologically, coral reefs are similar to tropical rainforests. They both have high species richness and high structural complexity. While the 3D structure of rainforests is made up by trees, the fabric of the reef is largely built by corals. And like rainforest trees, corals are very efficient at recycling energy. They do this in an ingenious way by forming a mutually beneficial partnership. Known as symbiosis, the coral animal actually hosts plant cells inside its body tissues. The coral creates a tight recycling loop. At night, they are carnivores, voraciously eating plankton to fuel their bodies. And by day, they are solar panels, with the plant cells generating energy from the sun by photosynthesis. Scientists recognise 70 habitats within the marine park, 30 of which are reef or reef-like, and 40 of which are non-reef habitats. For simplicity, this scheme can be reduced to a few broad categories. Inshore are the habitats that have evolved with the influence of the land. The mangrove and seagrass communities of our estuaries and bays are familiar to most people, as is their role in supporting important recreational and commercial species. Habitats change with both latitude and distance from the coast. Moving offshore, we encounter islands with fringing reefs. Compared to the outer reefs, the waters here are often murky, but the animals that live here are adapted to these conditions. Away from the coast and islands are the muddy sands, where the true interreefal habitats begin. Here we encounter strange creatures that live in clumps and mounds on the sea floor. Sponges, soft corals, sea whips. Their sporadic, clumpy distribution lends the name seafloor isolates. It may be surprising to discover that isolates are very important to reef health. This is because many well-known reef-dwelling species broadcast their larvae to the inshore seagrass nurseries. As the juveniles of species like red emperor and mangrove jack grow up, they move offshore using the isolates as stepping stones during their migration. Moving further offshore, we encounter deeper and even stranger hidden seafloor communities. Hidden between the reefs, where currents can be strong and directional, are gardens of interreefal filter feeders. The further offshore we go, the less dependent creatures are on nutrients from the land. Where oceanic waters upwell nutrients onto the continental shelf, we find deepwater seagrasses and algae forming vast meadows. We often travelled great distances across a seemingly empty ocean to get to the Great Barrier Reef. But these waters are not empty. They are vital parts of the ecological machinery that keep the Great Barrier Reef healthy. They are, in a sense, the Great Barrier Interreef, a vast, sprawling network of ecosystems and biological linkages that support the things that we know, love, and enjoy. There are many names applied to the classification of reefs, but we are going to use just a few simple descriptive terms. Coral communities that surround inshore islands are called fringing reefs. Offshore, the main body of reefs are known as mid-shelf reefs. And finally, farthest offshore at the shelf edge, there may be barrier reefs. Where these reefs form a continuous chain, they are known locally as ribbon reefs. Where they do not form a chain or are submerged at the edge of the shelf, they can be called shelf edge reefs or shoals. Typically, offshore reefs are different from those found inshore. On offshore reefs, fleshy algae are rare. This is due to the high number of herbivores and the low nutrient levels. By contrast, the opposite is true for inshore reefs. Here, fleshy algae are common and respond to elevated levels of nutrients. In this module, we learnt reefs are constrained by light, sea temperature, and water quality. We were also introduced to the astonishing array of species to be found within the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, and the many linkages that exist between reefs and non-reefal habitats. We saw how these traits are expressed as regional variation along and across the vast expanse of the Great Barrier Reef. Similarly, we saw how human activity and influence varies along the coastline and catchments that bound the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. Finally, we were introduced to a simple classification scheme for describing and understanding the thousands of reefs within the World Heritage Area.